3, 2, 1, go.
You're listening to The Kyle Chambers Show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Chambers. This is The Kyle Chambers Show, and I'm here today with Brett Shumay. Brett is an air traffic controller for the Air Force. He was part of the Air Force in the military for 20 years, and now he's been working for the Air Force as a civilian for the last 3 years. Thank you for joining the show today, Brett.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kyle. The views on this podcast are mine and mine alone, and they're not representative of the Department of the Air Force.
What inspired you to be able to join the military and get into the air traffic control side of things?
I should probably say the correct thing, which is I wanted to serve my country, right? However, I will tell you all the truth, right? So I'm from a small town in northern Pennsylvania, and I didn't come from a lot of money. So when I graduated high school, the options for me were to go to college and acquire a ton of debt, or do something else to try to get out of the small town that I was living in. And the military just happened to be my outlet, right? So it was, for me, it was, why would I pay to go to school when I can join the military and they will pay me to train me to do a job? So that was my initial decision for joining the military. As far as air traffic control, I'll be honest, I had no clue what air traffic control was when I entered the military. There was a bunch of jobs that I was qualified for from my testing that you have to take prior to coming to the military. And one of the jobs was air traffic control, and the recruiter just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. I put it on my list and I ended up getting it and came in into that career field.
It's really interesting how things can kind of form in a certain way. One of my friends is in the military in Canada, and some of the duties he asked to do, he thought he was going to get into more of the ground and that sort of thing, being able to do more of the action. And he's over serving now over in Europe, but the stuff he's doing is a lot different from what he originally signed up for. So it's interesting how things can shift and change over the years.
I grew up doing martial arts. I was going to come in and be a security forces, which is like an Air Force military police, is what I was originally hoping to sign up for. In the long run, I'm kind of glad I got my job that I did and not serving as a police officer.
What's a memorable experience that you've had as an air traffic controller?
Probably my most memorable experiences have been my deployments. So I've deployed to Iraq 4 times, 2006, 2008, 2010, and again in 2016. All 4 times I was obviously in the military, and we were at war for the first 3 of them. And then the last one, we were in like a liaison role or, a support role with the State Department, helping out the Iraqi government while we were there. I would say memorable for me is, those experiences changed my life in a lot of ways as far as my political views, my views on religion, my rules in general on life. Those 4 deployments probably were the most impactful that I've had over my career.
How do air traffic controllers communicate with pilots?
So everything we do is radio based from air to ground via radios. So we have 2 different types of radios, either it be ultra high frequency or very high frequency, VHF or UHF, what they're commonly known as. Mostly all civilian aircraft use VHF. UHF is basically a channel that's used primarily for military aircraft. And those are done, radio towers on the ground to the air that we use.
What do you see for the future for technology for air traffic control?
So a lot of things I think future-wise, there's some text-based controls, which means a controller would text a message from inside the facility into the actual cockpit of the aircraft. I think that's a possibility. I know they tried it out in a couple places. Also, there's a technology called ADS-B. I wish I could tell you what that acronym stood for. I don't know. But it's a lot of ground-based radars that work. And what that's doing is it is putting basically a radar screen in the aircraft cockpit for every pilot. So it used to be the pilots had to rely only on air traffic control to see what was going on around them. Now they basically have iPads that are hooked up to this technology that they can see a radar display around the aircraft. They can see the other aircraft out there, and they're using that for themselves along with the controllers to aid. So that would probably be the biggest change I'd see coming. But it's already here, and B, it's going to be expanded upon in the future.
From the karate side, I know you've been in martial arts for several years and you've been doing it on and off because of your work in military service. Why did you want to start your podcast the traditional way and explain what it's all about?
So the Traditional Way podcast covers the WKF, the World Karate Federation. It's something that I do with the Martial Arts Inner Network and with Travis Plowden. He and I were talking about doing a show covering the WKF because for me, I'm a huge fan. I love the sport. I love what that organization is doing with the sport, and I feel like it hasn't gained its potential following in the States, especially all North America, Mexico, Canada, United States. We're not giving it its due, and we have a lot of. I mean, right now we have Ariel Torres, who's number 2 in the world, and he's an American. I just covered this on my last show. Canadian Lily Rose Nolette just won a title, and she's doing big things over there. And the Canadian side as a fighter. We, as a martial arts community, need to support our athletes that are out there doing things on the big world stage, and that's what I hope to bring with my show. Is to give some let people know who these guys are and what they're doing, and that there's a whole big world going on other than the open karate circuits in the States.
The open karate circuit is great. There's been a lot of crossover in the past from the WKF traditional side and from the open karate circuit. We have people like Kalen Kowalski, Gabriel Rudolph, Rose Rayum, Andrew Cabellan. I could go on and on. Marissa Mariandro. They've all done the crossover from WKF to the open circuit. So I think if you have A, the crossover, and B, the coverage of people coming and doing demonstrations in the open circuit to expand people's horizons and make the sport grow, it's what it's all about.
Right. And also, so for my research right now in North America, I'm the only one covering the WKF. I think there's one other podcast out of Australia, but that's pretty much it. There's not a lot of coverage in the podcasting world. So I wanted to jump on it before the rest of the world got on top of it.
I think when it comes to the WKF, I did coverage of the WKF early on to start out my career on KC Sports Talk and my other podcast. I think with the WKF, it is Kumite and Kata, and there's a lot of rules, regulations, and it's not as flashy as a Jackson Rudolph doing bow or different things of that nature. So I don't think it gets as much coverage as far as the podcasting side, and mainstream media gets way more coverage than the open circuit does, but I don't think it gets the coverage it deserves from the athletes who are really at a top level, best in the world, because their open circuit offers more flashy karate. So I think that's why the open circuit podcasts cover the open circuit more. But I do think the WKF has its place and it's definitely earned its spot. You even see athletes like Mason Stowell doing the open circuit. Now he's doing really well in the WKF, and he's been really loyal with Jarrett Liker going back and forth between the two.
And Jarrett's now a coach for the U.S. team.
Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Not a problem, buddy. Anytime.